This week will be a really good week, but it's also going to be a tough week. We're going to be talking about something that people do not like to talk about. Conflict. Conflict is something that no matter who you are, no matter what you do, you face on a regular basis. We may not call it conflict, we may call it, well, we had a disagreement, or quarrel, or they were fussing, or whatever it is. You know, there's all these different words that we use, but it's still describing conflict. Conflict is a disagreement by definition. So when we look at it, we don't like to talk about it because no one likes to disagree with people. In our society, it's actually more acceptable to just stop being friends with that have different views. Well, they do this and I do that. We can't be friends. And we allow it to separate friendships. We allow it to separate families. You ever go to family things, you don't talk to that person because, well, they do this. Or last time we talked, we argued about this. Conflict. It's something we can't really avoid. Being someone who's a pastor, there's always conflict. But then besides that, I used to do customer service before I went to insurance, which if you ever meet people and you tell people you work for a health insurance company, there's conflict in that too. But no matter what, there's always going to be conflict. I learned to diffuse conflict in different ways as customer service, because there's nothing funner than getting called and yelled at and cussed out by people, right? I mean, let's be honest, that's the favorite part of that job for me. No. We want to avoid conflict, right? You drive around someone that you feel like there's going to be conflict. Like, I'm going to avoid them. Oh, hey, there's so-and-so. Last time we talked, we had a disagreement. I'm going to avoid them. There were girls that I graduated with that were best friends, like went to school together for 12 years, best friends. Senior year, they have a disagreement. They're still not friends. Like, the conflicts hold on and separate relationships, families, friendships. It can go so far, and there's always going to be there. It's always going to be conflict. I wish I could say that if you become a Christian, you will never ever have to face conflict again. Everything will be perfect. Everything will be easy. And I wish I could say that you will never have conflict with other Christians because you disagree about something. Nope, there'll still be conflict too. Because everyone reads something different, understands something different. Everyone has different experiences, backgrounds, places where you've lived, you've been influenced by. For me, I've had several key influencers in my life who have helped shape me to who I am. I was privileged and fortunate enough to have a dad who believed that if you're going to do something, you always do your best at it. Like, you don't go in something half-heartedly. You don't think there's... Like, my dad wasn't those... Like, okay. So some of you... Was anyone ever taught to have a backup plan? You're going to go to school, what you're going to do, have a backup plan. Was anyone taught that? Some of us were. I was not. Because my dad's feelings were a backup plan distracts from your primary goal. So if you have a backup plan, you're just planning that you might fail. He didn't believe in that. You'll go at it. If you wanted to quit sports, you're going to finish this year. I don't care if you want to quit, that's fine. You're going to finish this year, though. You started it, you're going to finish it. That's how I grew up. Which, it sounds like that would be kind of rough at times. And sure, as a kid who was tired of running suicides in basketball practice sometimes, that could have been tough, but it also taught me to stick with things. It taught me to, okay, how can I adapt to get over whatever conflict is causing me to want to stop doing this? Because it's our natural inclination, I believe, to run from conflict. Some people are just confrontational, and maybe you know what I mean. It seems like they run towards that conflict. Like the first thing they say to you is confrontational. Hey! I could say something right now to be confrontational with Caleb. Because of his car, and yesterday driving. Or I could say something confrontational to my wife. First thing I hear, you could say, hey, I thought you were going to do this. I mean, we can choose our words, and we know, okay, this is going to start an argument, or this is going to avoid the argument. Some people run towards, some people run away. So that's kind of where we'll be looking. That's what we'll be thinking about, talking about. The story that we'll be talking about will be out of Philemon. If you're not really sure where that is, I'll give you a chance to get it. It is towards the back. It's a very long book of the Bible. It's 25 verses, and it's right before Hebrews, but it will be on the screen as well. But with Philemon, one thing I do want to say before I say this part is that with this, and my thing did not update again for whatever reason. That's not the right one. But with this, with Philemon, what we have to understand is that it is a story about a man who owned a slave and the slave ran away. It doesn't really have enough background to give you more to say this. It's believed that some people say that he stole property from the owner. The way we view slavery in our time is like, well, he was obviously the bad person, the slave was the good person. We don't have a full story, so I can say more. I want to say that this is not a condonement of slavery. I think that's a positive thing, but what I do want to say is that was something that was part of their culture. And in Hebrew culture during Jesus' time, during the time that the Bible, the New Testament of the Bible was written, and even the Old Testament, there are various forms of what we would call slavery. Some of them still had wages even, which we wouldn't call that slavery, we'd call that employment, but they lived on property, they stayed there. We would call them like maids and butlers. It would have been, they still called them slaves. That was the reference there with them. Other slaves were working off a wage. They owed the landowner or whoever it was that they served a large debt of money, and the only way they could pay it back was working it off. If you've ever had parents and you did, like chores and stuff like that, you'll never be able to pay off that debt if you had to pay them back for everything. It would be kind of that idea, except they actually had to work to pay it back. They couldn't just like mow the lawn once a week and that's cool. So they had to work to pay it off. Then also there's a year of jubilation, if you've heard of that. That's a year that they're supposed to set all slaves free. All debt is paid at that time. So there's a lot of history from the Bible where slavery has been talked about, and we don't know which form, which style the Philemon falls under. So I just want to say that up front in case anyone's following along or they're reading along or like, slavery's bad though. This isn't a good thing. So why is Paul, because Paul is the one who wrote the letter, is telling him you need to go back. So some background is that Philemon is a Christian, says that he is a believer, and then the slave Onesimus is also now a Christian. They're both believers, they both believe in Jesus, and Paul is sending him back because that's what he's supposed to do. This, and I assume from some backgrounds I've read and stuff like that, scholars believe that most likely Philemon stole from the owner and that he had a debt that he was paying off initially. That's believed to be the background, but, it's hard to really know. I mean, you have 25 verses to pull from, and there's no other reference to either of these. So, we can take what other scholars believe and what I believe may be the background behind that we don't have here as about a grain of salt. It's just an opinion at that point. So, in verse 12, we'll start there. And it says, I am sending him back to you, and with him comes my own heart. I want to keep him here with me while I am in these chains for preaching the good news, and he would have helped me on your behalf. But I didn't want to do anything without your consent. I wanted you to help because you were willing, not because you were forced. It seems you lost Onesimus for a little while so that you could have him back forever. He is no longer like a slave to you. He is more than a slave, for he is a beloved brother, especially to me. Now he will mean much more to you, both as a man and as a brother in the Lord. So if you consider me your partner, welcome him as you would welcome me. If he has wronged you in any way or owes you anything, charge it to me. I, Paul, write this with my own hand. I will repay it. And I won't mention that you owe me your very soul. I just want to stop there for a second. I won't mention that you owe me your very soul while he's writing that he won't mention. Just a side note there. Just kind of that little reminder, hey, you should do this. I won't mention that you owe me this, but you should do this. That's we've all said that probably. I know I have. Not necessarily in that meaning, but yes, my brother, please do me this favor. For the Lord's sake, give me this encouragement in Christ. I am confident as I write this letter that you will do what I ask and even more. One more thing. Please prepare a guest room for me, for I am hoping that God will answer your prayers and let me return to you soon. Epaphras, my fellow prisoners in Christ Jesus, sends you his greetings. So do Mark, Aristarchus, Demas, and Luke, my co-workers. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with your spirit. So, one thing I want to say is that I think we can all agree that Paul has some degree of audacity in writing this. And why I say that is because he writes it saying, I know you will do this, I know that you will understand, and I won't mention you owe me, but I know you'll do this, and we all send greetings to you. He also, I don't know if anyone else notices this, prepare for me lodging, for I hope that through your prayers, I will be given to you. You know, as he says that, through your prayers, having confidence in your obedience, through your prayers, he's assuming that he's praying for Paul to be released. So there's an assumption, he assumes whatever debt he owes you, put it on my tab, but don't forget that you owe me anyway. So my tab is still zero, even if you do this. He's writing from that level. I don't mean that he's writing it as a negative or from a pompous level, but he's writing it from a level of someone with authority, someone who also knows the person. If you're good friends with somebody, you can talk to them differently than you would like a casual acquaintance, right? Like when I talk to like my cousin, me and him are 2 months and 2 days apart. We grew up like a mile or two from each other most of our lives. We talk to each other totally different than people that I casually know, right? I mean, we all agree. So one thing I do believe that just by the way that the whole letter is written is that they're not just casual acquaintances. Prepare a room for me also would refer to the fact that he probably stayed with Philemon while he was there. When he was there doing ministry, he was one of the people he ministered to. He stayed with him while he was doing ministry. Prepare that room for me again. Prepare it for me. I hope through your prayers I'll be given back to you. And then my fellow workers also give you their greetings. And then the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you, spirit. So there's some relationship there. So I want to say that is the position of this letter. But at the core of it is the focus of a conflict. Because if someone steals from you, I don't know if you've ever had that happen, it's not a pleasant experience. Whether you know them or you don't know them, again, if you know them more, being stolen from by them hurts more. Because you're like, they should know better. I've personally experienced this before, and it hurts. So he's writing from that, hey, I know this isn't going to be an easy thing for you to approach, but I need you to forgive him, which is against social norms, which we'll come back to. One thing I do want to point out in this letter is this word. It's koinonia. He uses that word, and it's actually the word that describes fellowship. That seems like an odd word to use to explain Paul's relationship with Onesimus. He says, he uses the word koinonia. He's koinonia. He's been in fellowship with us. He's been doing ministry to us, is what he says. That fellowship is also the word that is used to describe the New Testament church. It's the fellowship. It's the band of brothers and sisters and the coming together. And in our conflicts, it keeps us from fellowship. It keeps us from trusting one another. You ever had someone that you told someone in confidence something, then they tell someone else, like, well, I'll never trust that person again. Not with anything I don't want them to tell anybody. That's the confidence. We lost our confidence in them. We lost part of our fellowship with them too. And that's what koinonia is a very important thing, because the fellowship that we have is what's supposed to be the core principle of the church. It's what they used to describe the church. So they had fellowship together, they worked together, they lived together, they took care of each other's needs. It's much more than just, we think of fellowship, and in churches I grew up, fellowship on Fellowship Sunday was a potluck, right? It's food, it's sitting around, it's hanging out, which is a part of fellowship. It's eating together, it's communicating and talking. But fellowship's more than just casual conversation. The fellowship that they're describing, that koinonia describes, is the fellowship that we have when you actually live within community together. It's not just, hey, here's a meal. It's, Do you have need? Do you need anything? Well, hey, let's meet your needs. Let's supply for you. Let's help you. Will this help? Will this be what you need? That's what the fellowship describes. The other thing I want us to see as we look through it is that we have a community of influence. For their time, he's going against social norms completely by this. During their time period, if a slave had ran away that owed you money, they owed you money if they stole from you, anything like that, they would have been dealt with harshly. Not forgiven, not, hey, you came back, it's cool, we're all good. It would have been a very harsh punishment, and one that could have included up to death. Severe, severe punishment. That would have been the social norms. And Paul says, hey, I want you to forgive him, welcome him back, put him back to work, it's okay. But if you really would, I'd like you to send him back to me, to minister to me, so we have fellowship, koinonia, have fellowship together while you're doing this. I know this is going on, but I know you'll supply this, because this is what we need. But we all have a community of influence. That was their time period. This is what they believed. But for us, when the way we handle conflict is decided by our communities. Our communities include our home families. That's the people we live with. That's the people that raised us. That's the people we were around a lot as we grew up. That's our churches. That's all these things. That's our community of influence. We have or you could call it a sphere of influence even. But as you look at that, each of those make and shape us. So if you ever notice, people that live in vastly different parts of the country have vastly different opinions on politics, religion, work, food, right? Let's be honest. If you're in New York, in Chicago, and you want to talk about who has the best pizza, they're going to have a conflict, right? That's not it. Every part of our community shape us. Like, for instance, where we are, our style of barbecue, which is like our food in Missouri, apparently, barbecue and cashew chicken for this specific area of Missouri. The barbecue, though, is vastly different here than it is in South Carolina where my dad lives. If you like vinegar-based barbecue, that's great. I grew up with ketchup-based barbecue. That's, ketchup and the big, thick barbecue sauce and all of that stuff. Or Texas barbecue, where it's no sauce. Like, every place has their community, and that influences how they eat. But what does it influence on what we do? Your politics often are determined by where you were raised. I believe that. There's parts of the country that you believe this way because this is where you're from. There's parts of the country that believe this way because that's where they're from. Sometimes it's determined by the experiences that we had with someone from another background, belief, or whatever. How many people have ever told you, I don't want to go to church because these Christian people, blah, 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 blah. They treated me really badly, they talked to me bad. That was part of their community of influence. It influenced who they were, it influenced how they were shaped. I've been told that. And then I've also been told of, why do you treat me different because you don't treat me like other people treat me because I am X. Because we know that I live contrary to what Christians believe, but you still treat me normal, and other people don't. Our communities can shape us. The community of influence is actually so important. That's actually where the importance of baby dedication comes from. Because the community, the first community that's part of, is our home. It's the parents that raise it. The next community they're a part of is the communities they're around the most. That would be their schools. That would be their churches if they go to church. That's their extended families. And even the close family. Koinonia is the church. We always talk to brothers and sisters. It's because of that family relationship, the status that we have there together. So when someone calls someone brother or sister, it may not be a literal brother or sister, but they live in communities together where they see each other enough. The people we see the most often have the most influence on us. I'm fortunate enough that I've had people that have poured a lot into me to make me who I am. Those that have shaped me, those that have given me feedback, those that have told me this is how we are. But our community is responsible for that. It's not up to strangers to tell other strangers this is what you should do. I know that seems contradictory, but I'm going to promise you, if you're someone that likes to argue with people online, there's never been an argument won that has happened online. I feel like that is very true, especially in social media. I see people, and especially if you bring up topics like religion and politics especially, it'll just go on forever. And then the real thing, what happens is that you never influence somebody like, oh, you make a very valid point, you've changed my mind. I've never seen that once in a post, you've changed my mind, that was great. Usually it's, then it just goes to, you're an idiot or whatever if they make a valid point, and people move on. The conflicts that we have are often the conflicts that we choose to have. That may sound harsh. Sometimes we can't control and we don't happen, and sometimes there are good conflicts. I do believe that disagreeing can be a good thing. Because you ever disagree with somebody? I bet if I stood here, I could ask each one of you something, I could find, like, within 5 to 10 questions, I would find something we all disagreed on. I could disagree with all of you within 10 questions, I guarantee it. You could start with politics, that'd be a good one to divide the room if we really wanted to. But I don't believe in that. But I believe that those arguments that we have, this is the ground I'm going to stand on and I'm not going to budge and I'm not going to listen to anyone. It's the same thing as a toddler or when you're a kid going, no, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. We take that approach with conflict still. This is your point of view, this is my point of view. We're both going to stand on our sides and we're going to shout across them and no one's going to move. So when we look at conflict and like this conflict, is something that we can't really relate to because, hopefully none of us have ever owned anyone. But if you look at it from a boss to subordinate perspective, it changes. Many of us have had employees or at least co-workers that had to work with bosses, and we can see that the way that a boss treats an employee changes how that employee acts. If you're really lenient with them, they show up like, oh, it's cool, it's no big deal, and you kind of keep going that thing. You know what happens more often as someone who's been a restaurant manager in some of those areas? That person's late more often. Oh, I'm not going to get in trouble for it. It's no big deal. The person, it's a relationship. Sometimes you have that boss. I don't know if anyone has ever had this boss. I've had a few that were super strict. This is what the rules say. This is what we're going to do. This is how it happens. And you're like, I don't like this. Like, this is too rigid for me. Like, it just bothers me. Or the people that one thing, how many people like to be micromanaged when they work? They want to be told how to do everything. Anybody? I'm not seeing any hands raised. No one wants to be told how to do everything. You're like, yeah, tell me how to do everything step by step, way by way. That's how I'll do it. And some people do actually like that. I can't stand it. You get that. I work at a computer. I work for an insurance company. I work from home, so it's really hard to micromanage me now. But when I was in office, we had one boss that she would like to come and just stand behind us and watch us work for 30 minutes. So you're sitting there, you're working, and they're still there. Can I help you? No, I'm just watching. Looking for anything? Can I help point you in a way? And that is a form of conflict. It really is, because each of us have a different way we want to learn and a different style. But those conflicts are all very minor to the conflicts that we really have to face on a big scale. Conflicts are what in friendships, what in marriages, what in churches, all these things in businesses. You could go down the list. Everything's affected by major conflicts, and sometimes it's the smallest things that cause the biggest conflicts. We can agree on budget, we can agree on this, we can agree on that. I literally know people from churches who have left churches because the color of the carpet. Fortunately, our carpet's great, because we don't have any, so we're not arguing about the color. But really though, we stand on these, and if you could look at a friendship, I want everyone to think of a friendship or a relationship, and I want you to think what caused the actual dissension in the friendship, what caused it to separate, what caused the issue. Was it something that could have been avoided? Was it a conflict that we walked into? Most of my conflicts, most of my arguments, most of my issues come from one thing. Me. And it's usually me talking before I think. It's a really great gift I have. My friend's dad said he had this gift as well. He called it foot-to-mouth disease. Because it just spews out. And it's the equivalent of, digging yourself your own hole. I'm really good at that. And that's something that I've had to work on. But most of us have some form of this in conflict. Where it's it happens because we're just not willing to see another perspective, or maybe we're not willing to just disagree. It's okay to just disagree with someone. I promise you, you will not die if you're like, hey, that's cool, that's your belief, this is mine. There are times when it's like, this is why you need to understand this. This is what it is. But if you just push and push and push, they won't learn. Like, if you say you need to become a Christian, you need to know Jesus, this is why you need to know Jesus, but if you keep telling them and telling them and telling them and telling them, like, it's not having the positive effect. But what we can do is we can show them, we can remind them, we can have those conversations with them still in the proper way. But no one wants to get hit over the head with the Bible. That's kind of part of it. That doesn't mean we don't share Jesus. That doesn't mean we don't share Scripture. Doesn't mean we don't pray for people. It means when we do, we're doing it with purpose. It's not to beat people down. It's to lift people up. I am one of those people that I am pretty good at seeing the good in people. Like some people like projects and some don't. I like projects. I think it comes from being a car person. Like, car people like to buy a car, and they're like, okay. Like some people buy a car and they're like, it's perfect the way it is. It's stock, it's beautiful. Car guys, we buy cars and it's like, what all can I do? Like, where's the vision? Where do I want it to go? What all the different things. So sometimes for me, I think I look at people a little differently because I don't expect people to come to me and be perfect. One, I'll be severely let down every time if I expect anyone to be perfect. To no one to have rough edges, to no one to need any work. That's okay, because none of us are. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, we're all not perfect, that's okay. Jesus was the only perfect one. Like, that's the whole summation of perfection. But we do believe that we can help people go to different levels. We can help people learn more, we can help people do more. The hardest thing, though, is having other people who think that people should just walk in, be ready, and be perfect where they are. Because none of us are. We're not ready just to go. I mean, if you had enough people and you're willing to go through enough people and sift through enough, you could probably find someone who is mostly what you expected. And then even when you teach someone to do something, you're really teaching them the way that you do something. And like, okay, here's how I do this. Now, you can do this. And then if you want to change a few things, that's fine. But this is what we want. But I look at people and I see the best, where some people look at people and see the worst. Well, they'll never get there. They'll never be able to do this. And conflicts happen in those situations because we view it differently. The biggest conflicts happen there. So one of the things we want to know is how sound a Christian handle conflict. My slides are all messed up for whatever reason, guys. You'll have to forgive me on that. I don't know what happened this week. But how should a Christian handle conflict? First thing is stop. Right there, for me, perfect. Stop. Breathe. Take a moment. You're in the middle of a fight with someone and you're disagreeing about whatever. Stop. First thing you can ask yourself when you stop, you take a breath, is this discussion worth it? Like, is this an argument worth having? Is this something I want to go down? Do I think that this is going to add value to our relationship or teach them anything? Or is it going to help me? Is it going to help them? Stop. Hardest one of the three. Because if you can do this, you can do the next two. Sometimes you stop, or sometimes it's that stop right before if you say the next thing you're about to say is going to be an argument, stop. Husbands, this is for you. Stop. Think. That's one of the steps too. Think, but stop, take a breath. Maybe it's come back, have the conversation later when things settle down. Maybe it's you figured it out and you go through the next two steps. This is how you want to handle it. But stop. Because so many discussions, so many arguments can be stopped if we realize that the argument's probably not one worth having. If you want to argue about who makes the best car, or who does this, or who does that, or what's the best sports team, you'll argue till you are blue in the face. Argument's not worth having. That's top of the list. 2, pray. You stop. God, what should I say? Because maybe it's a conflict, a discussion that you need to have. Because there are those. It's a discussion of, maybe it's biblical, or maybe it's about your family, or maybe it's a discussion that just has to happen. No one wants to have a conversation that's based in conflict, but sometimes you have them. You pray. What do I say? God, I need your help. What do I do? What should this look like? I really need your help. Sometimes God, I just don't know what to do. I don't know if you ever prayed that prayer. I know I have. I just don't know what to do. Give me peace. Give me the words to say. So if you stop, it's a conversation you should have if you continue the steps. If it's a conversation you don't need to have, you can just stop and end it there. Is it easy? No. Like I said, that's the hardest one. If you catch yourself, you'll catch yourself the first sentence in. You ever do that? You say something, as soon as it comes out of your mouth, you're like, I shouldn't have said that. Nobody does that? I do it. Gladly admit, I do it. This is for me just as much as you. Stop. Pray. Okay. God, what can I say? What should I do? How should this go? What does this look like? And the third one is think. And you can really move these around. It could be in any order. The hard part is it's hard to pray or think without stopping. If you want to stop, think, collect, then pray, you can mix it up a bit. But if you pray, think, and then stop, it might be a different conversation. Or if you think, pray, then stop. Or if you think, then you stop. Because thinking, if you ask my wife, thinking is usually what gets myself in trouble. Oh, I thought this is what was going to happen, or this is what it should be. We get ourselves in trouble and conflict sometimes with stop, pray, think. Sometimes it's stepping away. Because they're conflicts. I feel like most of our conflicts we have with people are conflicts that aren't necessary. Like really, if we got down to it, think of the last 5 arguments or disagreements or something you had with somebody. Were any of those really value-adding? Were they value-based? Most of the time they're not. And my job, one of the core parts of my job with the insurance company is dealing with the company outside the insurance company saying we did stuff wrong. So my entire job is based in conflict. So sometimes you get a response to something you've already sent them, and you're like, you just want to type something you shouldn't, like you're an idiot, or you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm sure people that work with insurance companies feel the same way. It's all reciprocal. It goes around and around. But you just want to type something immediately and just be like, this is this. You should know this. Like, gosh, why don't you know this already? Stopping, thinking, praying, how should I respond? In my job, it's not always, a lot of times it's researching, finding out, here's the correct answer. There's a lot of arguments that would be stopped if we actually researched something before we said it. Like, what does this mean? Oh, that's interesting. Or, there's a lot of times me and Kristen will have a disagreement, not like an argument, not like a huge argument. We'll disagree about something, and we'll look it up and like, oh, you were right, or I was right, or see, like, this is what it says. Like, here's the actual right answer. But most of our conflicts that we have, the things that we let become the biggest things, start at the smallest things, and then everything that person does is then wrong. Oh, did you see they did this and this and this and this? Or they do this? Sometimes the conflict needs to happen. A lot of times we can avoid it. If you're going to have a conversation with someone, if you're a boss, if you're an employer, you're a manager, supervisor, if you're a spouse, you're a parent, there's pretty much a guarantee that you're going to have conflict at some point. My favorite answer is always because I said so, from bosses or from parents. Well, do this. Why? Because I said so. As someone who always asks the why question, that was never a great answer for me. Well, why did you say so? Why is this a thing? With God, I think we have conflicts more than most, if we're really honest. Well, why did this happen? Or how come this is going on? Or why do these things happen? Or why does this person get this and I get that? And we get this kind of pent-up rage or the pent-up anger, the resentment. And we allow there to be a conflict between us and God. And I hate to tell you guys, it's one we're not going to win. If we're holding against Him, well, this, and this has happened and I don't understand it. Because there's things that we just won't. No matter how many times we go through it, no matter how many times we see it, no matter how many times people tell us that it's in God's will for it to be this way, or it's God's will for this to happen, it doesn't change the way we feel until we handle it with God Himself. Because our conflicts, we may handle them one way or the other with each other, but our relationship with Jesus should change how we handle conflict. If it hasn't changed the way we handle conflict, we should probably think about where our relationship with Jesus is. Because Jesus didn't tell us to punish people. He told us to forgive people. He said if someone asked you for something, if they ask you for your coat, see if they need your shirt too. If someone slaps your left cheek, turn them to the right. He wasn't telling us to seek out conflict. He was telling us to seek forgiveness. As we went through the Lord's Prayer the last several weeks, the first part of this year, forgive us as we forgive our debtors, those that have wronged us. We forgive them, and you will forgive us. Our relationship with Jesus should change how we handle conflict. Because our basis of our relationship isn't in all these other things, but it changes who we are. I know, when I first got saved, I had kind of a short temper, which I think is kind of common for, most teenage guys. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But me and most of my friends kind of had short tempers, and you just kind of, blow up, right? You just kind of, small little thing, everything's wrong. And this is all wrong, and you throw stuff, and that was me. And then I realized, down the road, I was sitting in a call center, and this is only a year and a half, 2 years later, something bad happened, someone said something to me that would have I just would have chewed them out and threw something and walked off. And I was just calm, handled it this way, got it done, and I'm wow, the way I handle this has changed. This isn't the way I expected for myself to do this. Our relationship with Jesus changes how we handle conflict. It should change every part of us. It should change what we do, how we approach things, how we look at people, and we can see that people are more important than the argument we're having with them. Like I said, I can't go online on social media especially without seeing people argue about something. They argue about the weather, they argue about politics, they argue about religion, they argue about whose car is better than whose car, and they argue just everything. I mean, you could post that the sky's blue. Well, what's the dress thing? What color dress do you see? Is it blue, or is it purple, or is it gold, or is it this? Argument about everything. But our relationship with Jesus should change how we handle that. We shouldn't go seeking conflict. We shouldn't go seeking out, I'm ready to go fight somebody right now. I'm ready to have this conflict. I'm going online just to look for people to argue with. It should change our relationship with others if we have a relationship with Jesus. Does that mean we're perfect? Does that mean we'll never have conflict? Does that mean we'll never have problems? No. No. If anything, sometimes it seems like conflict finds you more when you get closer to Jesus. Because sometimes it means saying something that might offend someone, but it's truth. There's a difference between sharing the truth in love and sharing the truth in argument. Because if you're sharing the truth in love, you can look at Jesus' example. He was the hardest on those who said they knew God the most. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, all those people, the religious rulers, he was telling them, you do this is your outward action, but your hearts aren't right. Your hearts aren't ready, your hearts aren't there. But the people that, the people that were prostitutes, and it says bad sinners and tax collectors, he sought after them. He healed them. He gave them love. He gave them compassion. He gave them respect, which is something that was against the social norms of their society. He didn't have to do any of that. But his relationship with his Father, with God, changed everything for how everyone else would see him, and it's supposed to change how we see everyone else.